over the number of times that I've talked about a potential like Tory proper rebellion and civil war happening, a lot of people don't tend to believe it, because if you honestly look from the outside at the Tory party, they look as if they are marching in lockstep with Boris Johnson, that there is little to no dissent, that everyone is a very happy camper, that they're all fine, and that's it. That is if you generally look at the outside. However, all you've got to do is merely scratch the surface of this current Tory party, and you reveal huge gaping chasms in the difference between just some of their MPs. Like, there are a lot of very conservative libertarians that are at the moment very annoyed at Boris Johnson. There's northern MPs are really annoyed at him. His southern MPs in different areas are also really annoyed at him for lots of different purposes. The MPs want to pull, in the different groups that they have formed, want to pull the Tory party in different directions. This is a party that will literally pull itself apart. And at the moment, Boris Johnson seems to be keeping somewhat this very well handled. And I think this is mostly because behind the scenes, he is promising everything to everyone, just like we saw at the 2016 referendum. And if you know anything about his time at the mayoral office, seems to be pretty much the same thing, of promising everything to everyone, letting other people take the blame for what are essentially his actions. Again, just look at some of the, should we say, the sackings that occurred yesterday in the reshuffle. But anyway, before we do jump into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So let's jump into this one then, shall we? So this comes from The Independent. The title is Boris Johnson is giving too much ground to his rebellious Tory MPs, and it's hurting us all. Oh, I'll get rid of that. So, when Boris Johnson bit the bullet and broke the Tory manifesto pledge on taxes to boost spending on the NHS and social care, allies hailed him as both a bold and brave leader. Yet, he doesn't really deserve these labels. To create political headroom for his national insurance rise, Johnson has handed a bagful of sweeteners to very noisy, rebellious Tory MPs on two other very crucial issues: his COVID-19 winter plan and his proposals to reform the planning rules to ensure more house building. The goal of over 300,000 new homes a year was once Johnson's flavour of the month, vital for the economy and the prospectus for young adults trying to get onto the property ladder. But he has blinked amid the panic of Tory MPs in the South following the party's defeat at Chesham and Amersham by-election in June. The mandatory housing zone targets for local authorities and the zonal system, allowing houses to be built in some of the areas desperate for this, despite local objections, will very likely be diluted. It seems to be NAMBYism has won yet again. On COVID, Johnson's plan B for the country to survive the winter will probably become his plan A. Today, a very familiar divide between optimistic ministers and their far more realistic scientific advisors on the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, SAGE, has emerged, with scientists warning that hospitalizations could rise from about 1,000 to between 2,000 and 7,000 a day by next month in England. And Johnson is not brave enough to learn the lesson of his fatal delay in implementing restrictions just a year ago, when he blocked SAGE's proposal for a circuit breaker lockdown and ended up imposing a shutdown 6 weeks later. That is why Patrick Vallance, his chief scientific advisor, gave a barely coded warning to politicians at Tuesday's Downing Street press conference not to repeat the mistake, saying they should go hard and go early on restrictions in case there is a surge in cases. Despite about 130 deaths a day and the grim potential for thousands more, there is a rarely part of the public debate. So ministers feel somewhat under little pressure to act sooner rather than later. The planned relaxation for foreign travel restrictions is yet another bone for the very ravenous Tory backbenchers, but this is bound to result in a lot more COVID cases. After conflicting and confusing signals on vaccine passports, Johnson sounded quite positive about their use in nightclubs and other crowded venues at the press conference. He said, and note the use of the present tense, that passports are an important part of our repertoire. That was a very different tone to Sajid Javid, the health secretary, who delighted Tory MPs on Sunday by announcing that such passports were not going ahead. As Johnson acknowledged, the introduction of passports could make the difference between businesses remaining open and closing. They should be brought in now. However, Johnson is not bold enough to risk a Commons vote because of the opposition from about 40 Tory MPs. Procrastination, not bravery leading from the front, is indeed the order of the day. And until passports become necessary, as they probably will, and another yet unseated reason for putting off the decision is next month's Tory conference in Manchester, when Libertarian MPs had threatened to boycott it if passports were required. Johnson would have been again accused of one rule for us if they were not. The other elements of Plan B, such as the compulsory wearing of masks and people being urged to work from home where possible, are very likely to be needed. European countries have retained such restrictions and have seen case numbers fall very recently. In the UK, they are now rising. As the government's winter plans admits, there remains no considerable uncertainty, and scenarios which place the NHS under extreme and unsustainable pressure remain very plausible. The concessions to Tory MPs on COVID and house buildings were designed to stave off a rebellion over the national insurance rise. Johnson judged he could not fight on too many fronts at once. And although the bill implementing the tax rise was approved last night, 10 Tory MPs voted against it, with another 40 abstaining, a signal of definitely trouble ahead. Many Tories who have backed the government did so with a very heavy heart. And there is a very growing sense that the NHS will never hand back its lion's share of the 360 billion extra revenue over the 3 years. So there is the new levy will have to rise again to try and fund the social care reforms. We are on a very slippery slope to ever spending higher and spending on taxes, one minister was heard groaning about. Of course, politics is the art of the possible, and the Prime Minister wants to keep MPs on side. But there is also a very strong leadership. Despite his huge majority of about 80, Johnson acts as if it were 20, repeatedly allowing a very tale of Tory MPs to shout loudest to wag the government dog. Strong leadership would have meant doing what the Prime Minister knows is right on COVID passports and the housing crisis. He didn't. And these are going to impact massively us going forward. You know, I've said it before, we're not just in a housing crisis, we're in a housing disaster, pure and simple, you know. And for COVID, he's completely right. Boris's plan B will become his plan A. And of course, it will go, shall we say, possibly wrong even quicker. So potentially expect more lockdowns this winter. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next.